This is the Toyota Supra, and it's one of the most iconic cars ever made. It's so desirable, in fact, that it makes people go absolutely insane.
Is that a Supra?
I asked my subscribers if they'd rather have a Supra or a more modern Ferrari 360. Most non-car people would of course choose a Ferrari over a Toyota, but car people are different, and the results might shock you. While the Ferrari did edge out the Supra, it's closer than you might expect. So how did a little Toyota become so popular, it made the whole car world fall in love? Well, let's dive in and find out. The Supra started life out as this, the Toyota Celica. It was Toyota's pick as a competitor against Ford's Mustang, which was the king at the time. Now, the Celica was an impressive car in its own right, but this isn't the Supra that people know and love. So how did the Celica lead to the Supra? Well, in 1978, Toyota came out with the Celica XX, but Toyota North America changed the name to the Celica Supra, which they felt was better and more fitting. This technically created the Mark I Supra, and it definitely was a cool car, with an engine nearly identical to the famous 2000 GT, but it still isn't the fire-spewing twin-turbo car just yet. That comes later, so be patient. Next came the Mark II, real creative, also known as the A60, and the A60 followed a very similar design to the Mark I. It was technically still a Celica, but it saw a small power increase and a few other minor tweaks. It wasn't until 1986 with the third generation that it actually became its own model, and with the Celica and Supra cutting ties, it spawned the best one yet. The cleverly titled Mark III came with a more powerful 3-liter inline 6, but if you waited just 1 year, they released the turbocharged version. This turbo version would eventually lead to the 1JZ, a massively successful and tunable engine. From a sales perspective, the Mark III was a success, with nearly 108,000 sold worldwide. But towards the end of the run, sales actually started to slow. While that was taking place, the team at Toyota was building the craziest Supra yet, the model that would turn this car into an absolute icon. When the Mark IV was being developed, the team became very serious about building a true performance car. They redesigned the car using a subframe from the Lexus SC300. Then, they shoved a 2JZ under the hood, which didn't make a ton of power, but it was incredibly overbuilt and durable, and even better than the 1JZ that came prior. Plus, they added an F1-inspired braking system that actually gave the Supra record-breaking performance that only the Carrera GT could beat years later in 2004. All of this, as you might imagine, resulted in the perfect sports car, and most of its engineering success can be attributed to this one guy, Hiromu Naruse. Naruse was Toyota's test driver, and was such a beast around the famous Nürburgring that Ferrari referred to him as Nurmeister, or Master of the Ring. He was the one that pushed Toyota back in the early days to start testing on the Nürburgring instead of smaller Japanese circuits, as he felt they could really get the full potential out of the cars there. With the Mark IV being tested heavily and the engineering team focused on building a performance car, they built the perfect vehicle. Well, kind of. Unfortunately, despite being a critical success, the Mark IV was not a sales success. While there was plenty of engineering prowess and impressive performance from the car, it was still expensive and had a very limited production run. Additionally, Toyota was facing financial difficulties during the late 90s, which probably contributed to the slow sales as well. This ended up with the Mark IV being pulled off the US market in 1998 and all other markets in 2002. The car since, though, has become a cult classic, and there are absolute Supra fanboys everywhere. It's highly sought after, and even a not well-maintained Supra can still reach into the 6 figures. The Mark IV was a success for a few key reasons. One, it was incredibly well built. Due to the 2JZ being overbuilt, the car could handle massive power increases on the stock block. That's why you'll see so many 800 horsepower fire-shooting Supras, or even cars with over 1,000 horsepower, easily drag racing anything on the road. The car was also shown off in the first Fast and Furious movie, which helped turn it into an icon and showed the car as something that could be modified extensively. The movie really turned the Supra into a poster car that teenagers had on their walls. After the Mark IV was pulled off the market, many could view that as the end of the story. But 17 years later, Toyota announced the creation of a new Supra. Through a collaboration with BMW, the company revived the name and used the Z4 platform to create a modern version. The new Supra has received some hate from the car community, as it has some pretty big shoes to fill. For the first few years, it was only offered in an automatic, but now it's being offered in a manual transmission, which is helping a bit. And I think the new Supra shouldn't get as much hate as it does, because it follows a lot of similar trends from the old car. The B58 turbo engine found in the new car is extremely tunable, and the car is still somewhat affordable, staying in line with the older versions. But it'll sadly never have the magic of the Mark IV. For more car content, make sure you subscribe.